Hey guys, Plato's whack version of a Utopia. Yeah, so today we are kicking off a new series on my channel called Philosophy. And we're going to base it on the book here called The Story of Philosophy by Will Durant. He goes chapter by chapter through all of the major, most famous philosophers, their lives, and their main philosophical theories. Yeah, so if you're really into philosophy, stay tuned for this bomb-ass series I'm making. So his first chapter was on Plato. Yeah, my man Plato from Greece, Athens, one of the very first philosophers. He studied under Socrates, known as the founder of philosophy. So today we're gonna go through his crazy ass vision for a perfect society. Yeah, Plato basically starts off by saying that our governments suck. Yeah, our governments are bunk. And he says all the forms of government in some way or another are flawed, and they usually end up ruining themselves somehow, sabotaging themselves. So he gives some examples. He says, for instance, an aristocracy. Why can't I say that word? Aristocracy. Okay, so like a monarchy or a society that's ruled by a very small group of individuals. Basically, exclusively, they control all of the wealth and all of the government policies. The feudal system, kings and queens, this type of government, he says it doesn't work because power is confined to too small a group of people. Next, he goes on to diss democracy. He's like, democracy is retarded because the average person is just not educated enough to vote for somebody who is actually equipped to rule a society. He says that the wisest and the most ideal rulers, the majority they just don't vote for them because they're dumb. And he calls it mob rule. So that's his argument, and he kind of does, to a certain degree, have a point. In my opinion, the skill to get votes does not equate to the skill to rule a nation. It doesn't. It requires a different skill set. So he does, to some degree, have a point, and I was like, okay, Plato, I get what you're saying. What do you have to say to this problem, okay, with our flawed governments? So he's like, I have a solution. We're gonna revamp society. Yeah, it's gonna be a whole new revamping here. So he gives like an ideal utopia society for us. So we're gonna go through it now together. So the first thing that we would do is we would take all the children away from their parents and put them into a unified school system for everybody in that society. So it would be like residential school style, baby. Yep, take them all away. And he says we would educate them and they would all get an equal opportunity, no matter what race they were, what class they were from, what gender they were. It didn't matter. They would all receive the same training and education. So for the first 10 years of these stolen children's lives, he would get them to learn physical education. The entire curriculum would be on playgrounds and in gymnasiums and playing sports, and he said it was to strengthen their body, to strengthen their physical and motor skills, their physical intelligence. He says you cannot have a strong nation if they are not healthy and strong physically and in the body. Okay, so that's what they would learn for the first 10 years. Then he says, but then we would have to expand their education, okay? Because we don't want to raise a nation of weightlifters and savages. That is not the perfect society, okay? So for the next 6 years, he said they would teach them music. Yeah, music. He says music would teach them to appreciate the finer things in life. It would refine their character, would teach them very important fundamental concepts like rhythm, harmony and grace, and it would soften their character, make it richer, okay? And it would also elevate their spirit, because music, according to Plato, nourishes the soul. And I agree with him. Music is very nourishing for the soul. And so they would learn music and be immersed in music for 6 whole years. But then he says the study of music would cease because they need to move on to bigger, better things to further round out their skill set. But he says they will continue singing for the rest of their lives, right? So the modern version would be like they could just consider listening and practicing music. Will Durant kind of omits what happens between 16 and 20, but he says at the age of 20, these trained and educated individuals would undergo a severe testing, and it would be called the Great Elimination. Yes, the Great Elimination, and he said this test would reveal every weakness that these individuals had. It would test every single ability. And he says the people that failed this test, they would go on to form the industrial class of society, the backbone producers of society. So the workers, the factory workers, the merchants, the business owners, farmers, okay? They would be the real world working people, the failures of this test. He says the people that passed this test would receive 10 more years of training and education. So Will Durant didn't say what they'd be trained and educated in, but they would receive 10 more years of schooling, so just think about university. And then at the age of 30, there would be another great elimination. There would be another great test that our society would put these individuals through, and it would be even more severe than the first test that they went through at the age of 20. And he says the people that failed this test, they would go on to form the armies of society, the auxiliary or the guardians. Okay, so if you, for example, were 30 and passed this test, they'd be like, oh, you failed? Oh, you're gonna be part of the army. And that is your destiny if you're part of that society, right? And then the ones who pass, and by this point think there's probably not very many, they would go on to learn what Plato views as the most highest form of education. They would learn philosophy. They would learn how to think clearly. They would learn ideas. They would learn the regularities and constancies of the universe. Okay, so a lot of math, philosophical ideas and theories and things like that. Okay, they would receive this training for 5 years. And then at the age of 35, after they have received this philosophical training, their schools or whatever would kick these people out with no favor given to them into the real world, and they'd say, you make your way into the real world, compete with men of business, compete with men of the streets, and thrive, and figure out how to be successful in real society, okay? And so they would have to learn the streets, learn the laws of business, learn the laws of making money in the real world. And of course, some of them would break down, but the ones who emerged after 15 years of grueling in the real world, the ones who thrived, who became financially successful, gained real life wisdom, after 15 years, they would be the ones who automatically could rule. They would be the ones who could be candidates to rule. And that was how a society would actually choose the wisest and most adept rulers. Now think about it. These people, when they have gone through this extensive training and life experience, are at the age of 50 by this point. And I'm sure you could agree with me that they would be tough as fuck and extremely intelligent. Okay, so they succeeded in basically all areas of life. Very true, but of course, there's kind of a little bit of some problems with taking kids away and structuring society in this way. It's almost kind of communist in a way. It's like a advanced version of communism or something. And so Plato solves this discrepancy. He says, well, you know, some people, they might not like their lot that they get in life. Say they fail the Great Elimination and they have to be part of the army, or they have to be part of the working class. Well, how are we going to convince these people that this is what they're meant to do and to follow the rules of society, right? Because everybody has to subscribe to these rules in order for it to work. So he said, this society needs to have religion. It needs to have a supernatural force that will control the minds of people so that they accept the fate that society has placed upon them, so that they will accept what they're meant to be doing in society. They can't choose. They have to be tested, and they fail. And so they say, well, God willed you to be a factory worker, right? So Plato understood the importance of religion in order to control a large amount of people. The next philosopher that we're going to be going over is Aristotle, my man. Yep, we're going to be doing Aristotle next video. All right, see you guys in the next. Bye.